In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. We beseech thee, Almighty God, look upon the hearty desires of thy humble servants, and stretch forth the right hand of thy majesty, to be our defense against all our enemies, through Jesus Christ, thy Son, our Lord, who liveth and reigneth with thee in unity of the Holy Ghost, ever one God, world without end. Amen. All right, week 4, book 4, Prince Caspian. With The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, the movie wasn't too bad. It didn't veer too far away. It was still bad, but it wasn't that bad. Prince Caspian, right off the bat, the movie just takes what's in the book and says, we don't want any of this, and throws it in the garbage. It starts off with Caspian, a Hispanic man with dark black hair. Caspian in the book is described as fair of skin as he is of hair. They mention his golden hair in this book and the next book like 5 different times. And I'm like, look, I'm all for artistic interpretation, but if they ram it down your throat in a book what someone looks like, make him look like that. Anyway, so the last book, The Horse and His Boy, takes place before the end of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you recall, at the end of that book, the children go back into our world, and they're children again. No time has passed for them. They revert back to being children. And so now summer has passed, holidays are over, and they're about to go back to school. This book picks up there. It's a story about the returning to Narnia. It's about going somewhere else. In Narnia, while they've been gone, Narnia is not what it was. It's been reduced to fables, basically. They're the legendary kings and queens of the golden age of Narnia. There are no more fauns or centaurs who you see. Talking animals are a thing of myth. It's been overcome by telemarines from Talamar, another reference to more Eastern, Middle Eastern religions by Lewis. Because in his world, Christianity's only real earthly battle is between us and the Middle East. If you saw it nowadays, you might think us in England, but you know. So, they're at a railway station, and then something happens. It was an empty, sleepy country station. There was hardly anyone on the platform except themselves. And then suddenly Lucy gave a sharp cry, like someone who has been stung by a wasp. "What's wrong, Lucy?" said Edmund, and then suddenly broke off and made a noise like, "Ow!" "What on earth?" began Peter. Then he too suddenly changed what he had been going to say. Instead, he said, "Susan, let go! What are you doing? Why are you dragging me to?" "I'm not touching you," said Susan. "Someone is pulling me." Everyone noticed that all the others' faces had gone very white. "I felt just the same," said Edmund in a breathless voice, "as if I were being dragged along. A most frightful pulling. Oh, it's begun again." "Me too," said Lucy. "Oh, I can't bear it." The next moment, the luggage, the seat, the platform, the station, they'd all completely vanished. The 4 children, holding hands and panting, found themselves standing in a woody place. Such a place that branches were sticking into them and they were hardly room to move. They all rubbed their eyes, took a deep breath. "Oh, Peter," exclaimed Lucy, "do you think we can possibly have got back to Narnia?" I'm going to stop there. So in many, many stories, many fantasy tales, we see one person summon something or someone. We see people conjured from across the way. In sci-fi, so people teleported to you, maybe against their will. This is one of the only stories where we see someone being summoned. That's what Lewis really wanted to capture at the beginning of this book. He wanted to give you a feeling of almost having no control. You will be thrust into things. And so we have this very, very disarming moment where all the children are peacefully sitting there discussing their plans for the future in this coming term. And then suddenly they say, "Oh my goodness, we're being dragged somewhere," and everything's suddenly gone as if in a flash, and they're in a wooded area. We would all be very concerned if this happened. We'd all be very, I expect, maybe a bit overwhelmed if this happened. Those of us who are a bit less strong in their constitution might go so far as to faint is not something that we expect or desire. And yet, it's happened to all of us. We, against, I don't want to say against our will, we didn't really have a will when we were infants, but, we weren't really consulted when we were baptized, if you were baptized as an infant, which many of us were. And, if you were raised in the Christian tradition, you didn't really have the choice. You were just sort of raised that way. Something was thrust upon us, and then it just sort of went with it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Many people do think this is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We'll all be raised how our parents think. This is how being raised works. I think you'd be a very negligent parent if you didn't try to instill what you value dear in your own children. And so we are thrust into the spiritual realm almost against our will. Even those of us who converted, or in my case, reverted, didn't really know what we were getting into. Something happens when you're baptized and confirmed that, yeah, you can learn about books and sort of have like an intellectual understanding of, okay, this is going to happen. I'm a Catholic, I'm baptized, I'm going to be confirmed, I have the gifts of the Holy Ghost, yada, yada, yada. Oh, wait, it means this? Oh, wait, I have to actually, change? I'm required to do something? Well, I knew I'd be required to do some things, but not all of the things. That's where you get this spectrum of Christianity, as I put it. So Narnia is different. It's been hushed, hidden. The same is true of Catholicism. We are the biggest religion on earth, yet we're the only religion that it is permissible to openly mock and degrade. We're no longer considered the great cultivators of the civilization, even though we are. Go anywhere that is civilized and cultivated across the world, it was done so by Catholics. And yet, we've been reduced to the weird people who wear robes and chant once in a while and smoke incense throughout the church. We're not as we're not like the groovy Christians who change with the times and, oh, well, it's the modern day. We wear suits and we preach. And, oh, well, Jesus never said explicitly to not do this in the gospel, so, I can do it. If you feel it, then it's not necessarily bad and you should go for it. It's a religion of self. And then we as the Catholic Church, for some weird reason, for the last, I would say roughly 100 years, have been disturbingly content to stay hidden. We've been plagued with this modernistic idea of, well, I don't want to, hurt your feelings. I don't want to force my religion on you. Now, I'm not advocating for grabbing someone off the street, holding them down, and baptizing them. But other than that, go for it. Those of us who are a bit more out there might, with anything else except our religion, start fights, start arguments. If you have a room full of Star Wars nerds, it will be a battle to the death if someone criticizes Empire Strikes Back. I know this because I won. So we fight and argue and make points about things that we desperately care about, and then for some reason we stop short many times when it comes to our faith. When it comes to what we believe, the most dear thing to us. Well, I don't want to make you uncomfortable with my moralistic ideas. And yet, why not? Everyone else does. You mentioned that you're Catholic, and I'm sure many of us have had this situation. Someone will immediately be like, oh, so you're one of those people who believes insert thing we don't believe. Yeah, I don't like you guys. Exactly. Oh, you worship Mary. Oh, you think women mean nothing. You don't like them. Like, wait, one, how can we worship a woman and hate them at the same time? Like, choose a battle and stick with it. Don't do both. But often we'll only ever fight back if we're provoked. And even then, We might not even. We are content to stay hidden. The Narnians are not extinct, just so you know in this book. But people think they're because they've been content to hide. So now we see the opposite. We're going to flip to the namesake of the book, Prince Caspian. He is what I consider my generation to be. A return to tradition, a return to something stronger, maybe a bit more abrasive at times. He was raised falling in love with Narnia. His nurse, when he was an infant, told him fairy tales of Narnia, and he loved them. And then she was eventually done away with, and he got a stiff-collared tutor who had to teach him the ways of mathematics and science and astronomy and all other manner of frankly, boring topics, in my opinion. But then again, I spend my time smoking cigars and reading Aquinas, so many people think that's boring too. But eventually, he brings up Narnia on an evening alone with his tutor, up in one of the high towers where no one can hear them. And in discussion, he says, oh, no, Narnia did exist and is real, and it still is. We still exist. And Caspian looks at him strangely and says, I'm sorry, we? To his friend says, oh, please. Big, long beard. I'm a little shorter than most men. What did you think I was? I'm just simply a tall dwarf, and so I can blend in a bit better than most of the rest of us. But we exist, and we're here. Caspian's filled with a joy, a jubilation, saying, oh my gosh, these things that I loved exist. We link this back to last week, Shasta. Oh joy, I always wanted to go back to the north. I wanted to go home. I didn't know what it was. Well, now we have the difference. Caspian's saying, oh no, I know what it is, and I wished it had been real. And now I find out it is. I wish this power and strength that I saw back in the old days still existed. And you find out it does. The world has become fake. I mean, no one dates normally. They date on dating apps, and even then, you can't tell what anyone actually is. Pictures are posted with filters on people's faces. I mean, nothing is real in this world anymore. The meat's injected with hormones. The fruit's mostly plastic. I mean, it takes forever to find anything that isn't fake. And then my generation, and I take a sort of magnanimous pride in this, has basically been saying, okay, hey, we're kind of sick of this. Even secularly. So the secular people in my generation have said, stop putting sex scenes in movies. We're kind of sick of it. Like, please don't. I just want a movie. I just want to enjoy a TV show. Like, stop it. Hey, can you stop making all the characters who were white, can you stop making them like not white? Can you make Snow White white again, please? Can you make like a man in charge of the movie again, please? Like, who's not weak and pathetic? Can we have something that we used to have? We lost something. And I'm kind of sick of it. And so secularly, you see a return, even if it's not as much as some of us might wish, of return to something at least a little bit older. And then you go to the Catholics in my generation, and many of us are the traditional, Latin-loving, incense-smoking, cigar-enthusiastic people who say, no, I've stopped caring about your feelings. I believe this. Get over it. You don't have to listen to me talk. I mean, you guys do, but... And there's almost an unapologetic resurgence across the globe amongst Catholics in this generation saying, not only have we had enough of what the world is doing, we've had enough of what the church is doing secularly. Bring back chant. Bring back, at the very least, bring back hymns. Bring back beautiful vestments. In my case, and this is just my opinion, a disclaimer for those watching at home, my opinion, make the priest turn back around. I'm sick of seeing his face. I want to see his back. I don't want to see him. And coming from someone who helps at the altar quite often, I don't want to see you guys either. If I'm at the altar, I want to see the tabernacle. If I'm in the congregation, I want to see the priest's back. There's something that we lost societally, not just in the church, just everywhere, about 100 years ago. That the world is suddenly stopping and saying, we need to go back. And this is Caspian. And so his uncle, the fake king, has been grooming his nephew, Caspian, to be king until one fateful night, his uncle has a son. He says, oh, wonderful. Now I can just kill Caspian, and there's no one who can challenge my throne. So Caspian flees and seeks refuge in the woods. He has to get out of where he is, the castle, the city, the society. He has to remove himself and flee to the woods. What this is Lent. We take time during the year to flee into not the woods, but the desert, to regroup. Sort of take stock of ourselves and say, I want to remove myself from society just a little bit. I'm going to pray a little bit more. I'm going to fast a little bit more. I'm going to do some almsgiving a bit more. And remove myself and focus on what is it that I worship? Who is it that I worship? What is it that I believe? I was speaking with someone recently, and in discussion, I asked, well, why are you Catholic? And they said, well, I don't know. I said, well, you should. Even if it's a bad reason, you should have a reason. We should have a reason. We should not simply say, oh, well, I'm Catholic. Why? I like fire. I don't know. They swing it around once in a while. I don't really know. It's fun. That's a bad reason, but at least it's a reason. But I think many people, if you ask them why they're Catholic, many of them would just say, I was just kind of raised. Okay, well, I don't want to sound judgmental, but we have confession 1 hour throughout the week. That's just it. We have 1 hour a week. And there are some days when I'm like, really? Over 100 people received Eucharist today. I only saw 5 people yesterday at confession. Maybe I just found like the perfect parish where no one sins. But part of it also just goes, how many people aren't going to confession? How many people don't take it seriously? How many people just receive the Eucharist because it's just what they do? How many people are culturally Catholic? Don't actually do the thing. So Caspian removes himself from society, goes into the woods, and there he finds a badger making stew. He's quite confused and a little scared. He sees a dwarf there as well, helping him. And they start talking, and they go into conversation, and eventually, in the movie, which many of us might sadly be more familiar with than the book, in the movie, a bunch of Narnians all gather together in a big conclave, basically, and they're all like, but he's a man. Get him out of here. Which isn't what happens in the book. It's the opposite of what happens in the book. In the book, they all meet, and they're all like, oh, thank God. A son of Adam's come back to lead us. The centaur, who studies the stars, says a beautiful line. They do keep this in the movie, which I actually enjoyed, but it's beautiful in the book where he says, no. Narnia was never right until there was a son of Adam leading it. Narnia's only ever thrived when the proper people were in charge. I could say a lot of things on that I'll get in trouble for, so I won't say those things. But there are other things that I will comment on briefly when it comes to leadership in the church, not in a schismatic way. I love Pope Francis very much. I'm very faithful to the authority of the church. Many people nowadays, in their desire to modernize the church and make it seem less reclusive, there is a massive push for women ministers. No. No. One, even if a bishop decided to ordain a woman, it wouldn't work. In a sacrament, you need matter and form. I think I brought this up in a different talk, or it might have been at the confirmation kids. I brought this up recently in some talk. I gave a talk a lot. So even if a bishop said all the prayers over a woman, the matter, the woman, it wouldn't work. It'd be just as valid as if Father Hammond took grape juice and a Nilla wafer and said Mass over them. It wouldn't be the Eucharist. It's not wine or bread. And even more than wine and bread, it has to be the proper type of wine and the proper kind of bread. You can't just take a thing of sourdough and some rosé and say, hey, we have Mass. It has to be pure, 100% red wine to a certain level of fermentation and unleavened bread. That's what he used at the Last Supper. So one, the debate's a non sequitur because, women just ontologically, inherently cannot be priests. Even more so, though, I want to take a tangent here because this is probably the one issue in the world. This is a big claim. The one issue in the world that bothers me the most. Think about what you're saying. Well, not you guys, because you guys are all solid, wonderful people. But the people who advocate for female ordination, their statement, just watered down to the base premise, is women deserve ordination. Women deserve to be priests and deacons of Holy Mother Church. Find the priest who you consider the worst priest you've ever known and ask him, do you deserve to be a priest? I'm willing to wager over $1,000 that he will say no. Even if he's an awful priest. I've known priests who, frankly speaking, I wouldn't like or have ordained if I was a bishop. And I've asked them that question. I've been like, hey, just wondering, do you deserve priesthood? Do you deserve to be ordained? And they've all been like, yeah, no. Because they don't. I was in seminary for 3 years and never once did I think that I was owed it. All the men who are in seminary, you ask them, hey, so at the end of this, when you're ordained, almost all of them will say, whoa, not when, if I'm ordained. When they talk about being a priest, they say, well, when I'm ordained, God willing. There's always a caveat. There's always in speech of, hey, I hope this happens. I think God wants me to do this, but it's not my call. When a bishop has men who are about to become deacons, he has to write them a letter saying, I want you to be a deacon. If the bishop doesn't give you that letter, you can't. You can't be a deacon. It's called the call to orders. It is the most beautiful office in the world to be a priest. And for anyone to have the audacity to say they deserve it sickens me, frankly. So when you hear things that try to modernize the church, especially something so radical as that, stop for a minute and say, you know what, as much as my modernistic mind, as much as we hate it, we all have a very modern mind because of how we were raised and the world we live in, says, yeah, equality. Maybe I should wait a second and push a little bit and see what the actual argument is. That was a complete tangent, it has nothing to do with the book, but I started it and I couldn't stop it, so it's over now. So, leadership in the church, though, we need men who are good men. When I was in seminary, I loved how every year my rector, Father Carter Griffin, brilliant man, look up his books, they're brilliant books, said at the beginning of every year, our job in college seminary is not to make you priests. Our job is to make you marriageable men. If a woman wouldn't want to marry you, the church shouldn't ordain you. Because we need men who have the desirability. Not only should women be like, I want the father of my children to be a father in the same way that this priest is a father to his parish. They should also be like, hey, you know what? I should be able to, if I leave, get married. See, if you can't, when you finally get ordained, you also should desire marriage. If you don't desire marriage, you shouldn't be a priest. It's like the default setting for everybody is to desire marriage. And so to give that up for the other office is a higher calling and a more painful calling, because you're denying yourself the most fundamental thing. It's why I laugh. People say, well, I feel called to marriage. I'm like, well, yeah, so do all of us. It's like the default vocation. But so we need men who are marriageable men, who are good men. Well, that starts with us. Our parish, we as people should encourage men to grow in masculinity. Something that the culture, again, the thing that the church has been content to hide from for far too long, in my opinion, is content with the feminization of men. Look at it in the main mediums of media. We have, every single movie, which they're all failing because no one wants to watch them. But every movie is, oh, see, the woman's doing it, and there's, I think, a man somewhere in the movie, but oh no, the woman's just like a man. That's why she doesn't need one. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Like, speaking as a man, speaking on behalf of men, we kind of do need women. If nothing else, we like them around. They're fun. They're nice. They're nice company. So if you look at any male-led movie or book, if you will, there's always several women who are brilliant. So in Narnia, High King Peter, he's the leader. He is in charge. It is not disputed. Doesn't mean that we don't care about Susan and Lucy. Doesn't mean they're not important. For every male lead, there was a counter lead of a woman. Go to another great English thing I'll be doing a talk on next Lent, Lord of the Rings. Well, yes, we have the Fellowship, that's all men. But we have Arwen. We have Éowyn. We have Rosie waiting at the end for Samwise to marry. We know the women's names because they matter to us and we enjoy them. And Galadriel. Oh, yeah. Mea culpa for forgetting the Queen of the Wood. And so, we are having men degraded by saying you're not important and you should just, shut up and go away. Then we're having women degraded by saying, hey, you're just like men. For the women sitting here, are you like men? Just wondering. Like, are you exactly the same as men? No? Okay, I didn't think so. That's what bothers me with the talk of equality that we see nowadays. It's when we say that men and women are equal, we mean equal in worth. That being God died for us and therefore the sacrifice was the same. That's kind of where it stops. Because after that, equal means the same. And in no other way are we the same. That's my favorite thing about my fiance. She's not a dude. I'm very happy that she's not. And so maybe, just maybe, I don't want to get canceled, but I think I've already have been. Maybe men and women are made differently by God and called to different estates by him. Maybe those estates are a good thing. Maybe the innate desire of men and women are the same. So look at our world that's very, very equal, opportunity-wise. Well, why are there still more men in the military and more women in nursing? Well, because men, when we're growing up, our games are centered around shooting people and taking swords and running into the woods and slashing around. I spent many, many years with a towel wrapped around my neck and a stick in my hand running through the woods behind my house, slaying imaginary orcs and goblins and all manner of other things. I didn't really think anything of it. My friends did too. And again, in general, women grow up, doing much more, calm things. They're the ones who want to get a tea set and have a tea party. Most men don't grow up saying, I really, really want to have a tea party. It's like oh, for Christmas, please, can I just have that pink fairy tea set, please? No man says that. What we want is the G.I. Joe tank with the extra gun attachment, now with more guns in 2025. So we're wired differently. You can see that from how we're born. And then you go a little bit further, and that's why the nurturing occupations. Well, it's primarily women because women innately want to act as mothers. Men innately want to act as protectors and providers. That's why we have a lot of men who are farmers. And even if women work on a farm, they don't do the same thing that men do on the farm. That's why we want to be soldiers. Well, some of us. So that's why, if a guy carries a gun, you're like, well, yeah, okay. If a woman's carrying a gun, you're like, oh, that's a bit different. You see that a little bit less. Because it's not the inherent thing, again, in general. So our culture is degrading both men and women by saying that we are exactly the same and can just sort of switch in and out. And again, we've remained hidden for far too long. So Talmar has destroyed Narnia. Everything's in ruins. Aslan's never been seen for over 1,000 years. You haven't even seen Narnia. It's a godless world. And when there's a godlessness, the Eastern religions come in. And so that's what we see. We see a conquered Narnia. But Narnia is not necessarily conquered because it's still there. They just haven't fought. Okay. So we're going to move a little further down the line. The four Pevensies have been called to Narnia because after many battles, the remnants of Narnia, led by Prince Caspian, haven't been able to really gain any leeway. And so they find Susan's horn. And the legends say that if they blow the horn, help will come somehow. They don't know who, they don't know what, but help will come. And so they blow the horn, they send envoys out to the great sacred spaces in Narnia. And the one that the Pevensies arrive at, here at the beginning of the book that I read, is Cair Paravel, the great kingdom of Narnia, but is in ruins, it's gone. Again, Narnia appears to have been conquered. It appears to be weak and just empty. And so on the way back, there's some debate on whether or not Aslan's been showing up. As usual, Lucy sees him. The others sort of don't believe her. You'd think they would have learned by now, but they haven't. And so eventually there's a beautiful exchange when Lucy meets him face to face. As soon as she got through the trees, half wondering whether she had been using her arms to push branches aside or to take hands in a great chain with big dancers who stopped to reach her, they were really a ring of trees round a central open place. She stepped out from among their shifting confusion of lovely lights and shadows. A circle of grass, smooth as a lawn, met her eyes with dark green trees dancing all around it. And then, oh joy, for he was there, the huge lion shining white in the moonlight with his huge black shadow underneath him. But for the movement of his tail, he might have been a stone lion. But Lucy never thought of that. She never stopped to think whether he was a friendly lion or not. She rushed to him. She felt her heart would burst if she lost a moment, and the next thing she knew was that she was kissing him and putting her arms as far around his neck as they could, and bury her face in the beautiful, rich silkiness of his mane. Aslan, Aslan, oh dear Aslan, sobbed Lucy at last. The great beast rolled over on his side so that Lucy fell, half sitting, half lying between his front paws. He bent forward and just touched her nose with his tongue. His warm breath came all around her. She gazed up into the large, wise face. Welcome, child, he said. Aslan, you're bigger. That is because you are older, little one, answered he. But not because you are. I am not. But every year you grow, you will find me bigger. For times she was so happy that she did not want to speak, but Aslan spoke. Lucy, he said, we must not lie here for long. You have work in hand, and much time has been lost today. Oh yes, wasn't it a shame? I saw you all right, but they wouldn't believe me. They're all, but from somewhere deep inside Aslan's body there came the faintest suggestion of a growl. I'm sorry, said Lucy. I didn't mean to start slanging the others, but it wasn't my fault anyway, was it? Oh, Aslan, you don't mean it was. How could I? I couldn't have left the others and come to you alone. How could I? Oh, don't look at me like that. I mean, I suppose I could. Yes, and it wouldn't have been alone, I know, not if I was with you. But what would have been the good? Aslan said nothing. You mean it would have all turned out all right somehow? But how? To know what would have happened, child? No. Nobody's ever told that. But all anyone can find out is what will happen. If you go back to the others now and wake them up and tell them you have seen me again and that you must all get up at once and follow me, what will happen? Well, there's only one way of finding out. So first, you will find me bigger. Again, in the movie dumbs this down immensely, and I can't stand it. But in the movie, you meet Aslan, she's like, oh, you're bigger. He's like, oh, every year that you grow, I'm also growing. That's not what it says in the book. Lewis is a wordsmith. His craft is words. He uses it as a blacksmith would his anvil and hammer. He chooses his words with care. And so when reading a book of philosophical or theological nature, such as the Chronicles of Narnia, take the words seriously and be very strict with what they say. Every year you grow, you will find me bigger still. But I have not aged. The way that we interact with God when we are 5 is very different than how we interact with him now. We have a very different relationship with him. So every year we grow, every time that we get older, we find him bigger, we find him deeper. That's the point of the fairy tales. That's the point of why Lewis writes as he does. He's saying one day you'll be old enough to read fairy tales again. Meaning when you get older, you'll put more into it. You'll get more out of it. The Christian, I was in a debate about Sabrina Carpenter recently. I didn't expect to be on her side, but I was. Not the best person, but But the Christian should be able to say, okay, well, what's good here? What's bad here? I can dissect it, and I can appreciate the good whilst condemning the bad. Now, this does not mean consume all manners of horrible media and say, but this one line's kind of nice. That's not what I'm saying at all, so please don't do that. But there is a way to, especially when you approach the world, say, no. This is good. All this other stuff around it. So the matter itself is good. The things that are accidental, changeable in it, we need to weed out a little bit. We need to move them away. But the desire is good. That's why you look at this world and you say, I understand why you want this and what you're seeking. You just look in the wrong place. There's something greater that you could be pursuing and achieve the same thing you desire. But we often don't. So we will find him bigger still. And then we come to the crux of this section that I really want to thread in with what I've been saying. I couldn't have left the others and come alone, though, could I? Yes, she could have. But very often we ourselves find ourselves pushed with the modernistic world, ourselves agreeing with modernism. I was in a debate recently about whether or not everyone deserves to be interviewed for a job. And people I was discussing it with, family members of mine who are in general very intelligent, were saying, well, yes, it's an insult to human dignity to not interview everyone for a job. And I said, no. If I'm interviewing someone for a Catholic school and they're not Catholic, I'm not hiring them. I don't care if they're the greatest English teacher in the world. If he's like, oh, well, yeah, but I'm Jewish. I'm like, okay, well, you're not Catholic. I'm sorry. Even if he says, oh, yeah, I'm Anglican. Be like, not Catholic. I'm only going to hire Catholics at the Catholic school. That's not insulting their human dignity. It's just saying, no, you have to be Catholic. If I owned a construction company, I probably wouldn't hire women. I'd be like, yeah, I mean, you're a woman. I kind of prefer men to do this because, a lot of reasons, but mainly because in general, men are stronger, especially if they're applying for a construction job. So it's not insulting their human dignity. It's just saying, well, no. There are certain people cut out for certain jobs in general. But we can often get caught up in a modernistic field to say, no, 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 no. We're equal. Everyone's equal. And everyone deserves the exact same opportunities, yada, 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 yada. Yes, in general, sure. And it's a nice thought. But again, push and dissect it a little bit and say, wait a minute, what is the actual conclusion? And how does that actually look? And what does it actually mean about men and women? Because we're not equal. We're not the same. We are very, very different. We're equal in worth. But that's about it. So we could not have gone alone. It's very, very hard to be Catholic nowadays. It's always been hard to be Catholic, but especially nowadays, when we're the ones made fun of the most, we're the ones attacked the most, and we're the only denomination that has, not changed our stance on basically anything. And so even when discussing things with other Christians, it's hard to, when discussing with Protestants, it's hard to say certain things because we're like, okay, yeah, you're wrong. And we get to a certain conclusion. Some days, if you're like me, you talk to certain Protestants and you're like, you're not even Christian. Your baptism isn't a right baptism. What you believe goes against the scriptures. How can you claim to be Christian when you believe all these other things that aren't Christian? And those conversations are hard. It's hard to look at to be talking with someone who's not Christian. It's one thing if like you're both like nominally Christian and you can sort of debate on that nature. But you talk to someone who's a complete atheist, living a horrible life, and they're like, "Yeah, why should I care?" It's a lot harder. It's not easy, and it's not very desirable. So it's the temptation, the very, very attractive one, is to just say, just not say anything. I don't want to get involved. And yet, that's kind of your job. We have a mandate from Holy Mother Church given by our King to go into all the world and proclaim the gospel. If you're given a position to do so, and an opportunity to do so, we have to do it. I don't want to say you too often because it sounds like I do it all the time. I don't. I'm a horrible sinner. So, but there have been many times, even in this job, it's a lot easier for me because I'm like, oh, well, I'm a catechist. It's what I do. But even then, sometimes it's hard and kind of uncomfortable to mention certain topics. Topics I've covered tonight in this talk alone were not the easiest things to bring up just because there's just such a social taboo around them. It's not easy to say men and women are called to do different things and aren't equal the way the world says so, even to other Catholics. A good friend of mine, he's in seminary. I was talking one time and I jokingly said, so you're going to go convert the world? He said, I'm going to start by converting the Catholics. Mm-hmm. Which was funny, but it was also true, saying we've lost something. Again, we're recluses now. We're in hiding. And again, for far too long. Those of you who recall the beautiful, wonderful papacy of the German shepherd, Pope Benedict XVI, remember it was a lovely time. I think he's my favorite pope of the last 50 years. My favorite quote of his is, "The church must steadfastly, without shame, preach the truth, even if we are reduced to only 12 again." I could not leave the others, could I, to follow you? Yeah, you can, and you should. We should. Many a friendship has painfully ended in my life because I was like, I can't remain here charitably. All of our discussions devolve into debates on morals, which is good in theory, but not great for just grabbing a coffee. I can't support your lifestyle if you engage in the marital act before you're wed and, don't really do anything morally upright. I can't be around you because we can't have a friendship the way that we ought to. We can't converse casually because you disagree with everything I believe, and I disagree with everything you believe. And again, even with other Catholics, there's a spectrum in Catholicism. You meet people who are very, very charismatic, and then there's a beauty charismatic. I used to be charismatic. I used to lead worship at my youth group and stuff, and I was the lead singer in our praise and worship band. So I've done the thing. I know "Reckless Love" by heart. I've sung "Oceans" my fair share of times, so I understand. But in my opinion, there's something deeper. I'm not saying go back to Latin and silent masses. I don't want to go back to that. I enjoy them once in a while, but I just want to be reverent. That's all I really care about. Just like bring back some hymns. That's kind of like all I want. Is bring back nice vestments and hymns. But that's a different discussion. Swing by my office if you want to talk about it later. We desire to go back to something. We desire to hold on to something. And so you debate things even with other Catholics, and they're like, no. We ought to pray like this. Oh, you focus too much on doctrine and dogma. I'm like, you focus too much on emotions. We have that debate, even amongst Catholics. You can leave the others, though. There are some days that you actually should, that we actually should. Because some days, in some situations, it's the only way you can prove a point and sort of get it across to certain people. Be like, no. This isn't a heated debate about a movie. This isn't a heated debate about my car. This is about the most important thing in the world to me. Like nothing else is more important than God and my beliefs in him. And so, hey, if you attack him all the time, if you don't like him, if you hate him, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and still hang out with you because I just can't. I need to move. I need to move somewhere else. I have to go somewhere else. I can't do this. And many of us here are like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you? Well, a lot of other people would say, you just like agree to disagree. No, that's a sentence I hate. Like most other sentences, I can't stand that sentence. If it's worth arguing about and talking about, then it means we disagree. If something other than like an opinion, like a movie and stuff, it means there is an outcome that's objectively correct. And if it's worth talking about, you have to find the objective answer. And so, yeah, that's another reason I don't have too many friends is I'm like this. But actually, it was a very long discussion the day with my fiance when she said, we don't have to argue about everything. I said, no. I said, we don't argue. And she's like, see? I was like, come on. It's sort of a lose-lose situation. But we did talk, and she's like, hey, sometimes just don't push. Just let it stay. I'm like, yeah, but like, what if I think you're wrong? And then we had that discussion. So, who do you think? You. The one who talks for a living. But so we enter into Lent. We regroup our souls. We go into a spiritual reclusiveness, if you will. But just like Lent, we're not supposed to stay there. The church is sort of in a moment, in my opinion, of awakening. Just like Narnia is in a moment of awakening now that the Pevensies has returned and they're amassing armies against the Telmarines. The world and the church is in a moment of awakening, saying, you know what? Something was good. Something has been lost. I really want to bring that back. I really miss that. And so there are marches and surges across Europe, across America right now. It's illegal to do it, but it's still happening in Canada, America's evil top hat, where people are saying, hey, you know what? Like, we miss our culture, we miss our church, we miss our religion. We miss normalcy. We miss what was normal like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Can we bring that back? Just a little bit. And so here's where we are. I'm always happy when the notes I didn't read coincide with what I said off the top of my head. And I'm like, hey, I did it. So, I'm going to fast forward to the end of the book real fast. The Telmarines are defeated in battle. It's not like what happens in the book. Again, it's not what happens in the movie. Ignore the movie. Never watch the movie. It's an insult to the book. If you're sick, you can watch the movie, but that's the only leniency I give you. So, oh, there's so much. So, we now reach Narnia being returned to its stature as Narnia. Caspian is truly king. There's a beauty there. There's a joy there. And they're entering into a new age of Narnianism where they can rebuild and come back. And this is Easter. They were in the woods. They did the battles of the woods, and now they're back, and there's jubilant shouts and joy, and that is Easter. During these long weeks, we don't sing the glory. We don't sing the hallelujah. We wear purple, which is a sad color in the church, and so we are lamenting. And then we get to Easter, especially if you go to the vigil, which I encourage you to do so as many times as you can. It starts out in the dark. And you get to the proclamation, the lights come on, and you hear for the first time in over 40 days, hallelujah. And there is a joy there. You're rejoicing, and there is beauty. This is why I harp so heavily on bringing back traditional hymns in the church, because they're one specific for each time of year, and they're wonderful. If you listen to the ones for Lent, I encourage you to do so. They are very, very sad. They feel very, very empty, and you don't feel happy when you listen to them. You can appreciate the beauty and sort of sit back and smile and go, oh, that's so nice. But like the words themselves, like entering into the music, it makes you feel sad and empty. Because it should. You should during this time of year. That's kind of like the point. Why we put ashes on our heads. So that when you get to the hymns that we sing at Easter, they're basically wedding songs. There's an Easter hymn that we're using as the processional hymn at my wedding. Because it uses marriage tones and words, and also the title's hilarious. So we enter into this time of joy. But we have to actually do it. We can't rejoice at Easter if we didn't suffer during Lent. We can't rejoice at Easter if we don't, go to Mass at Easter, or pray at Easter, or, take Easter joyfully. The octave of Easter, I have a very nice meal every day in the octave of Easter because I can. And also because it's the greatest feast in the church. We should eat better during that week than I think during any other time in the year. Because it's a liturgical feast. Rejoice. Lent's over. It's the octave. Have a filet mignon steak every night because you can. I mean, some of us can't, like myself, because it's expensive. But, get decent food. I also have like a meat subscription, so I don't really get meat from the store anymore. But, I might at Easter because I can, and it's Easter time. But in this, we need to recognize what we're celebrating. We can get caught up in the festivities far too often, or we can get caught up in just the one day. He died, so will we, both to self and eventually, literally. Then he came back. And if we're close with him, so will we. So what this means, I believe it's Chester. I want to say Chesterton. I have a fear that if I actually say it's him, I'll be wrong. So, a very smart person once said, Christianity, yes, it was Chesterton. Christianity has died many times and will continue to do so. We should not fear this because we have a king who walked out of the grave. In my opinion, we have been dead for almost 100 years in the church, or slowly dying. We've been on life support. And right now we're seeing a resurgence of taking our faith and climbing back to the surface, saying, no. I'm going to use very, very harsh terminology right now, but I'm me, and I can do that. And most of you expect that from me at this point because it's how I talk. So it is not the weak, feeble, pathetic Christianity that says you do you. Or, hey, we can agree to disagree, even though you think I'm an idolater and I think you're a heretic. Hey, we're fine. No. Let all the Muslims into the country, even though in their teachings it says they should wipe us off the face of the earth. Like, I actually shouldn't be okay with a surplus of Muslims in my town. I'm not super excited about this anymore. No. We are the church that, for better or worse, whether we agree with it or not, the Church of the Crusades. We're the church of which we're justified, by the way. Not every battle was justified, but the Crusades themselves were justified. And I will die on this hill. We're the church that said, you know what? If you're a witch, we're going to get rid of you. Again, not everything that happened during that time was good, but we took a very hard stance against things. We're the church that said, no. There's a separation between church and state, and if that exists, you cannot try our priest in civil court. We have our own courts for that. If you're an ordained minister of the church, you cannot be taken by the police. We'll arrest you ourselves. Do not dare lay a finger on them. We were the church. Yeah, it was great. That was actually the whole thing with Becket when he was enemies with the king because they unlawfully arrested and killed one of his priests. And again, what he did afterwards was what we need to see more of nowadays, which is excommunicating people for doing things that aren't Catholic. I have a list of at least 10 people who I can rattle off the top of my head who definitely should be. So we stopped wielding the weapons of power and showing that we are not simply an organization that sort of chills in the world, sort of we've been around for a long time. We are the church of Jesus Christ. We are the fullness of truth, the bulwark of truth. The gates of hell shall never prevail against ours. We are the noble army of martyrs. We have died for our faith. We have suffered for it. And to just let it fall away because it's not very nice. Give me a break. That should not be how we go out. It's like, actually, this just came to mind. Last thing. I just finished a TV show. It's called, I'm not going to say the name of it, actually, because somebody might be watching it. I don't want to ruin it. But the TV show, it's like 8 seasons long. It was a great show. It was like really, really intense and in-depth. It was like, a big overarching plot filled with like subterfuge and, espionage. It was like so in-depth and it was so good. The very last episode, do you know how they defeated like the big bad who's been hiding behind the shadows for 8 seasons? They knock him out with one punch. It's like the most anticlimactic thing in the world. And then you're sort of left there. I was sitting there staring at my screen. I'm alone in my apartment, and I like yelled like, "What? I sat through 8 seasons of this beautiful show, and this is what you give me? That was so lame." Do not be the people of the church that historians look back on one day and say, "Really? For 2,000 years and then this? Come on. That was really lame." No, we have a culture, which I gave a different talk about during Advent. We have a culture and identity that is unique to us as Catholics. And more so than that, we're right. So we're not just like an ideology. It's not like, oh, well, I'm a libertarian. Yeah, well, I'm a conservative. It's like, no. We're right. We're Catholics. We're right, objectively, about everything. Sorry, we just are. We said for years fasting is good, and people were like, fasting kind of hurts your body. And then a bunch of doctors nowadays are like, hey, you know what? Fasting once in a while is kind of a good idea. And the church is like, we said that like 2,000 years ago, dude. Like, come on. We're like, hey, you probably shouldn't, just erase what gender means because, we are made differently and it's important how we're made. And the world is like, no, we don't need to do that. Then eventually, now the world's like, actually, maybe there is a difference between man and women. The church is like, yeah, we know. Hey, you shouldn't get drunk. It's not a good idea. It's not good for you. Drinking once in a while is fine. The world's like, hey, maybe a life of partying isn't good. It's like, The church has the ultimate monopoly on, I told you. If only you would listen to me. So what we need to do is, as we enter into the many phases of our lives where we retreat into the woods and die and come back at Easter. And as we are part of this current part of the crop of the church, which is much to my jubilation, coming out of the shadows and saying, we're not going to stay hidden. And we're actually going to start fighting for our faith. Hopefully not physically, but if we have to, then I won't hesitate for a moment. I will die on the hill of Catholicism. And that's what we must do, to say, I'm a Catholic first, and I'm all else second. And in so doing, we will come out of the grave with our great King and enjoy the rebuilding of Narnia, the rebuilding of the church as we enter into this new age of what was that was good. What was, is now, and ever shall be in the world without end. Amen. Good evening.